All right, so in one of the in the RTS course that I have right now, there's an area where I'm creating junk for the sci-fi junkyard. All this stuff over here that's kind of just splattered around. So I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of see what that looks like. And it matches the environment pretty well. It fits in here. It definitely looks like a whole bunch of metal junk. I want to show you how to build this. And it's going to take a couple steps because we start with something that basically just looks awkward and kind of ugly. Like, what on earth could this ever be designed for? Except it's going to work. Because let me start diving down into the lower scale, into the lower quality versions of this. So first off, I'm going to stop the code. So we lose a little bit of our game lighting here. Let me go over to scene where we lose a little bit more. And now I'm going to turn off the lighting again, the extra lighting that is trying to adapt to it. And now we see the color changes on this. This is not that great now that we're looking at it in this light. Of course, lighting makes a big difference in games. All right, so this material is pretty low poly. Let me just grab one of these and I'm going to pull this up. This is kind of chaotic and weird looking, but there's so much of it. And it's low poly and weird. So let's figure out, one, how do we make this stuff? Two, you could see how it looked good, but let me show you one other thing here. Oops, not what I wanted. Let's go find the junk. I'm going to select all of the junk over here. Not all of those. There. So I select all of the junk, and then I'm going to set the rotations all to 0. There's a lot of duplication here. There's only 2 objects in all of the junk of this scene. So when they are like this, it makes it, they really don't look that great. So one of the things is that there's a tool, and I cover this in the RTS video. And over here, if I go to editor, I can apply random adjustments. And now all of these start to look more cluttered. Well, that one's just floating in the air because I just put it there. But you can see this ends up just looking like junk, like clutter. If I go to the navigation map, I can now bake the area again. And I still have my pathways through. It gives me enough space. And it remaps out according to the space on the edge of the junk. So it's always available. All right, now let's dive into how do we actually build it, because I want to get into the Unity side, the Blender side. All right, so to go into Blender, I'm just going to create a new Blender object. And I'm going to show you a couple previous ones really quick. Let's go here, and then I'm going to go to Open Recent, Test Blend. Oh, helps if I put it on the right screen. There we go. So we go to Layout. And then you can see this is the general shape. Now there's lots of different shapes on these things. So if I go over to a file, recent, let's go to, don't save, and then go to layout again. Here's another one, it has a different shape. And I'll go to one more, open recent, and there, don't save. And I'll just keep it in this window. A common theme about this, that everything branches out from the center with, well, pretty much 6 arms. In some cases, there are more. And all of them have different types of endings on them. They can be bent, they can be messed up, they can be mangled, they can come out in straight or very sharply angled lines, and it looks fine in the end. In fact, having a large variation on this is a positive thing for this. There's a few places that we want to make sure it looks right. One is that from the center, most things should stick out about the same distance. So when it rotates, remember that random rotation applies. When it rotates, we still want it to be sticking out about the same. We can have relatively empty areas, like this area is kind of empty, and that's okay. We don't need to fill the whole space. But we do need to make sure that any of these will always have something sticking out. All right, so now this is a great way to learn Blender, in my opinion, as well. So I'm just going to say File, New, General, and don't save. The big reason I think this is a great way to learn Blender is because you don't need to worry about how it looks. There's very little in its design that matters. You don't need to worry about numbers, specifics. It doesn't need to match a specific shape. Let's just build. All right, so first thing, you're going to need a 3-button mouse, and you're going to need a full keyboard. keyboard with the numeric keypad. I'll show you the shortcuts to get around the numeric keypad for this one. But for the mouse, the only ones I know of are with the middle button. You need the middle button to be able to move around, and it's hard to do with the trackpad on a laptop. All right, so let's dive in. Okay, so first of all, when you hold the middle mouse button down and drag, then you get this rotation. It rotates around a point. If I hold Shift and do the same thing, then it drags my point of reference around. Now, if I start to rotate again, then it's got a center point that's based somewhere that's invisible. If I lose track of the object I'm on, I can select the object and hit dot on the numeric keypad. That brings it back into focus, so it is now the center of my editor camera's attention. Similarly, I can accomplish the same thing by hitting the tilde, which is the little characters right next to the 1 on the keyboard, and it comes up with this, and I can go to View Selected. And now it puts that into focus as well, the item that was currently had my selection. All right, now, oh yeah, zoom, scroll wheel to zoom. Now I'm going to click on the object. I've got it selected already, and I'm going to hit Tab. Now that switches between edit mode, so I can edit individual pieces, and the object mode where I can just move around the whole object. So one thing that's really important is that these hotkeys like Tab only work when your mouse is in the window that they're made for, because the same key hotkey can be used for different purposes in different parts of the program. So up here, this is where we switch from object to edit mode. But if I press Tab up here, doesn't change a thing. I have to have the mouse down here in this view to change from edit to object mode. All right, so now we have the object selected. I want to be in edit mode, which lets us grab individual pieces of it. Like I can select with a left click any of these vertices. Next, I can also select edges. I went up here and I selected this little dot, or this little dot right here is the vertice or vertex selector, and then over here is the edge selector. So I can click one of these and I can select the edges. I can use a highlight too and grab a couple of them. And then over here, this third one is face. So I can select an entire face. All right, now these are also ordered by 1, 2, and 3. Again, the mouse has to be in this view, but when it's in here, if I press 1, it switches to this mode, to the vertex mode. 2, it switches to there, and 3, it switches to faces. All right, so I'm in faces. That's where I'm going to be doing most of the editing for this one. So here's one of the first things that's pretty cool. I'm going to press E on the keyboard. I'm not clicking the mouse, I'm just pressing E. And now I'm just moving the mouse. And you can see it's following a line. It created this new section that sticks out from the original cube to whatever distance I want. And the angle matches the exit angle from the object that I'm leaving, that I'm basically extruding from. Okay, so I can put that there, and this cube is still basically the center of the object. So to make this junk sphere thing, I'm going to have to extend this out in each direction. So anyway, I've got this one. I can click on a face, and I can press E to extrude, and then click again to release when I like the position it's at. Now, I can also press G on the keyboard, and that lets me move stuff. So now that I have it out here and selected, I can move it around. And oops, let's hit Control Z, and I'm going to move up here. But let's also go back a step. So I just wanted this one. Anyway, I'm going to press G, and now it's moving around. While it's in this mode, I can switch to X, Y, Z. So I can press Y, and now it moves only across the Y, no matter where my mouse goes. Now I can use Z to go only up and down, and I can hit X to go forward and back. Now, key thing with Unity, Y is up and down. In Blender, it's X and Y are flipped here. Okay, so Y is going to reference the front of the vehicle, or front of an object. Okay. Now, I've got this object sitting here. I can move it around. I can use undo, Control Z. So G lets me move it around. Great. Now I can hit, I click to let it go. Now I'm going to hit S and I can scale it. It's a big important thing about this. If I'm really close to the center with my cursor of what I have selected and I press S to scale, I don't have much range to scale. It's really, it ends up modifies it. It makes its modification really difficult. So if I want, especially if I want to make smaller adjustments, what I want to do with this is I'm going to hit escape, which is another way of, you can, just like clicking, except it puts everything back. I'm going to hit S while my mouse is out here. And now it's much smoother. It's much slower scale. I can drop that down much more easily. Now, the center of this doesn't really matter too much about what you do. So I usually just kind of bring it out quickly and just, now that I've got the scaled down version, I'm going to hit E to extrude again and E to extrude again. All right, now it's going to be hard to keep working up here. We need a new way to focus it. This is where I'm going to use the dot again, to the dot on the numeric keypad, or this was the tilde on the keyboard, selected view, to zoom in on a particular face or a particular selected item or a group of selected items, and it goes in between them, selects them all. Make sure that I can see them. All right, so with that in mind, now I can keep working on this part. I'm going to use a different section. I'm going to use R. So I press R, and now I can rotate. I twist this thing around. All right, now I can also change the axis, because right now it's just kind of going somewhere at an angle from the camera, between itself and the angle of the camera. But I'm going to change this to X, and now you can see it's just twisting it like that. All right, now let's do this. I'm going to go back. Now I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to right-click and click Subdivide. So I right-clicked on the face and I hit Subdivide, and now I got this out here. I'm going to press 2 on the keyboard and now select these two lines and press G to move them around. In this case, I want them to go up and down, so I'm going to use Z. All right, so now I've got that, and let's select the items. I want to go back to 3 to faces. I'm just going to go to one side, E, there. Same thing for here. Shift select to grab different items. All right, E to extrude. All right, there we go. So now I've got this Y coming out of here. So let's expand that just a little bit more, and I'm going to do a couple more shortcut keys just to make this stuff interesting, or so you have some tools to work with. This was I. I is inset. So basically I'm just dragging this inward and you can see the result of it. Now E to extrude can also go in. So I can push that in, or I can go back out. So I'm just going to press E. In this case, I want that to go out. And I'll do the same thing over here. I and E there. Okay, now that I've got that out there, let's select an object here and an object here and press, I want to recenter my focus. And now let's select these two. On the edges, press E, and now I'm bringing it out here. And now this is also establishing the distance that I have to head out on every single side. So I'm going to do one other thing here. I'm going to do a larger selection. Now when I did this larger selection, it didn't get the stuff on the back. Now I could try holding Shift and getting them all, but occasionally I'll still miss pieces. And it can be very hard to select everything. So another shortcut is to go up here and switch to wire mesh mode. It will now select through the mesh so it gets everything. All right, I'm going to go back into this mode, and now I'm going to G to position along Z and bring that back down farther. So that's about the extent of how far I'm going to come out of the cube, because I have to go about that same distance away from the cube center for every side. All right, now that gives me an object. This gives me rotations. Let's see. Oh yeah, R for rotation. And one key trick is that when you want to make something that looks kind of bent on here to come out at whatever odd angle, I'm going to have an item come out here, E, and then I'm just going to hit R, rotate whatever angle the camera is at, and hit E to extrude again, R to rotate a little more, E to extrude again, R to come out, etc. And that might be a reason why this is broken. The bent stuff that we end up finding in here. All right, so E, bring that out. GY, sorry, yeah, Y will do. All right, and then E, bring that out, and GY. And same thing over here. Let's just do GY again. GZ up a little bit. And GY that way. Okay, so yeah, I'm just messing with some stuff. And that's the idea. You just roll around to different angles of it. I'm now going to select one of the other faces, focus on that, and now we're going to do a speed video for getting the majority of the rest of this up. All right, so now in this section, I just want to do a minor modification to this. Well, we'll get to the modification in a second. Let's save this. And what project did I have up in the background? I'll add it to the same one. Let's go to Inspector. This is RTS Course A. So now let's go back to Blender, and it's RTS Course C. Let's go to A. RTS Course A, Assets, Exclamation, Models, and we will call this Test 2 Blend. All right. Now that that's saved, I'm going to go back out to Blender, and I'm going to take this new model, this Test 2 that we've got, and I'm going to drag it in here. Now, let me turn back on scene lighting, and it's kind of obnoxious. This thing is glowing bright. Why is that happening? The reason is because that this comes with a camera in a light in Blender. So I'm going to select those items and delete them. If the model is being prepared just to go off to Unity, get rid of all the extra stuff. If you're creating it to create nice visuals in Blender, then yes, the cameras and lightings are invaluable there. All right, so saved that again, return to here, it's reloading it, and there it is. Now the scale is a bit large compared to the other ones that are in here. So I want to adjust this. Now I could adjust the scale directly and by minimizing it here, but there's a better recommendation. If you have a standard size that you want to go over to the actual model itself, which I can find by clicking the mesh filter for cube, and then I see test 2, and over here we have a scale factor on its import settings. I'm going to change that to 0.4. I'm pretty sure that'll work. And then scroll down, hit apply. I might need to go back and change it again. But that's a common thing when you end up leaving systems like Blender where the default cube is twice the size, or it's 2x2x2 instead of 1x1x1 in Unity. So your cube defaults are not the same. So now I've got this object in here. I can rotate it around and it's got all these various characteristics on it that look kind of interesting. And the next trick is to duplicate that. There is going to be one other thing we'll have to alter about this, but let's duplicate this into a bunch of junk. So I got one, let's hit Control D and drag that over, Control D, drag it over, Control D, we'll do it again and again and again and again. But you can see we're basically just duplicating a whole bunch of the same thing in this. And you really see that pattern standing out in here. I'm actually going to select a bunch of these and we'll make this a little bit bigger. Control D and drag this one like over here. There. So I'm making this little junkyard area inside of the game, inside of Unity. So there we got that junk, but let's rotate it. So I'm going to do that by selecting all of these objects and I'm going to add that rotation script that I had, random rotate, and then hit Tools, Editor, Apply. There, and now I've got this random junkyard mess. So there it is, just in the gray shading. And you can see it does look, you don't really see the repeating patterns in here very much. They're all hidden, but it's all gray. We do need to get more of that content back out. So, or more of the color back out. So now let's go pick a color for it. So I'm selecting all of it. Oh, and there's one that wasn't in there because it's probably way up here. Let's get rid of environment and go to test 2. Mineral clump can go away. Test 2. There we go. Now I've got all these selected. Oh, which also means I was missing the component on this one. We're going to go back and put our rotary expansion. No, random rotation. There. Now all of them have random rotation. Next, we need to set the material, which right now is just using whatever default material, just the material that came with it, gray. And then we're going to start selecting other materials. Now, one thing that's happening that's going to stand out in this is a lot of lines. A lot of lines. Even if I pick a material that doesn't really have lines or much in the way of lines. Like this one is primarily these little grids. But look at that. There's grids in here showing up, the little crisscross pattern, but then lots and lots of lines. Let me show you why the lines are here. Let's go back into Blender, and I'm going to switch over to UV editing. We started out with a cube, and when we are extruding and expanding, it's basically just reusing the exact UV position. The UV position is where that part of the 3D model maps to a texture. And this over here in the UV editing panel is where we can edit this. So I'm going to select a face and then hit A. Well, actually, let's hit 3 so I select the actual face and then hit A to select everything. And you can see it's got that plus where a box would have unfolded. All right, so let's change this so every one of these panels gets their own space inside of this, which I'm going to do by, with my mouse over here, I'm going to press F3 and say Smart UV Project. So this is for unwrapping. And I'm just going to go with the defaults. There we go. That aligned it. Now I'm going to save this so that puts the UV map back into Unity. And now Unity has this X grid more all over the place inside of this. Now that X grid doesn't necessarily work here very well. What tends to work best for this are patterns where it changes in the texture a lot. So something like this one might be better. It has multiple sets of colors going on. So I click that, and this looks more like construction equipment that's been broken apart. All right, so that's how we do it. Now when I get back into, oh yeah, that was scene lighting. When we get into the game lighting and it's a little bit dimmer, this looks even better. All right, but that's the junkyard pile.